Greetings, Mark Goring here, publisher of the Conway Daily Sun. And today, along with reporter Damon Steele, our guests are the chief and the assistant chief of the Conway Village Fire Department, Phil Remington and Phil Richardson. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks for having us.
Good. All right, well, let's start off with, if you can explain what's going on with the whole precinct system. I know there was a lot of votes this spring.
Yeah, so I'll do my best to update it as of today. The end of the year, we are dissolving into the town. We'll become a town department, water and sewer under Public Works, and then the fire department as a department within the town. Redstone has moved in. Oh,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, so the Conway Village precinct that's been around forever will totally go away at the end of the year?
Yep, the town will manage the assets of that,
Okay.
the Conway Village precinct, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
Redstone has been absorbed by Center Conway. I believe that they're planning for the end of the year for East Conway to move into that compact, and North Conway is remaining as they are.
Okay, and then, so in the world of the chain of command, Steve Solomon was the chief for many years, and so you were the assistant chief prior to that?
Yeah, I was the assistant chief, and on Steve's retirement took over as the chief.
And then Phil?
Yeah, I was a deputy chief for probably 10 years under Steve, and I was a deputy under Phil when he became the assistant chief, and then moved into the assistant position when.
And you have a new deputy?
Nope, we've filled that with a full-time captain at this point and left that position as we're both there full-time and handling it at the basically lieutenant's level for the call department. There's a full-time captain who oversees the lieutenant's mix of full-time and call people.
And how many full-timers, what is that mix?
So it's 9 full-timers, including the both of us. And then I think the last count, we had another 9 to 12 call people that we see between call and part-time people. Who we see, the part-time people will work 12, 24 hours a week just to fill in when people are on vacation, out sick, training, things like that. Some of them double as call people. And then the call people will come in as needed for additional staffing during calls, fire and EMS.
And your salaries and all that, that'll just come out of the, it used to come out of the precinct.
Yep.
But now that's going to fall into the line item in the regular Conway budget?
Yep. Yeah, so we will be town employees.
Okay, and what's the offset revenue for all that stuff?
So the offset revenue comes from, ambulance transports, fire prevention fees, things like that, and then the rest of it's made up out of tax base. Similar to what it is now, the precinct has a tax rate. Any revenues that we make, whether it's from the ambulance or contracts with other municipalities such as Albany, go to offset that tax rate, which is what the final ask from the taxpayers is at the district meeting, similar to the town.
And does the Conway Village precinct people still pay a precinct tax?
They will not. They will just be they will pay their portion for our services. So that will still be divided up as it is now between the non-precinct, the precincts, but it'll be under the town. They won't necessarily receive a precinct tax anymore.
But are they taxed individual? I mean, are they taxed as a precinct then still?
So they'll fall basically under what we historically have called the non-precinct, because they will not be in a precinct. So that area would be non-precinct and would just be the fire tax that would incorporate what is now currently Conway Village.
So if you're in a non-precinct area, and I should know this, but I'm not in a non-precinct, so you pay, if North Conway people pay a precinct tax and non-precinct people pay a fire tax?
So basically everybody pays some sort of fire tax. It just depends where you live in town, who that goes to. So if you're in Center Conway, that goes to the Center Conway Fire District. If it's in North Conway, it goes to North Conway Fire, North Conway Water Precinct. Us, it goes to Conway Village. There's sections of town that don't fall into those precincts. Those areas are basically evaluated on a formula that they've used over the years, and I can't rattle it off the top of my head because it's complicated. They figure out basically by taking all the budgets of all the fire departments, working up that formula, and then determine how much those people pay on the valuation of their property. And then that is then contracted to both North Conway and Conway Village.
All right, it does get a little complicated.
It does get complicated,
It is,
yeah.
all right. But Damon, go ahead.
And you also cover, I think, out to Waterville Valley and some towns beyond Conway and Albany.
So yeah, we have an arrangement with Waterville Valley and Grafton County, and those are for the upper portions of or the more west sections of the Kank that are on this side of the mountain. Obviously, for Waterville Valley to come all the way around for a call in that couple mile section of the Kank would be long. So what we do is we handle the call, then they pay us back for anything that we do. Some years it's nothing, other years it's a couple of calls. The same goes for Livermore, which is Grafton County. So that's just an agreement. It's all call based on how many calls we do.
I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of calls you handle. I mean, you guys are very active on river rescues. You guys obviously respond to fires and crashes, and I think probably still Narcan, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And medical emergencies. So how has the department been doing? It's been very busy historically for years. Can you just talk about your busyness and what kind of common calls you respond to?
Yeah, so last year we had our busiest year yet with over 1,500 calls, between 1,500 and 1,600. There are all types of calls. A lot of what we do is medical. The other portion of that, we're really an all hazards department, right? We're doing motor vehicle crashes, medical calls, swift water calls, some backcountry rescue, snowmobile calls. It's a mixture of everything. Last time I checked last year, we were ahead of where we were at this point last year by 20-something calls, so we're already fixing for another busy year. Summer's still around the corner. But yeah, we stay relatively busy. You know, there are days that are hit or miss, and there's other days we don't stop all day.
What do you, if you had a percentage breakdown of how many related to tourists and how many related to locals?
That's a hard one to answer because it depends. You know, we can assume that calls, you know, in the national forest on the Kank are people visiting, but it's not always.
Yeah.
And the same goes, you know, you assume we do calls at a residential house in town, it's going to be somebody local, but it's not. So it's really hard to differentiate. Are the calls based on tourism or are they based on local? We can break it down where they are, the towns they're in, the precincts they're in, what type of call, but I can't answer what, you know.
I mean, what do you think?
I think it depends on the time of the year. You know, most of the winter we see mostly local people, especially our end of town. We don't have the ski area, we don't have that kind of stuff. We don't do nearly as many calls up on the Kank in the winter.
Sure.
But we do snowmobile calls into Bear Notch and those portions, so those tend to be visitors. Whereas the summer, we spend a lot of time motor vehicle crashes, up on the Kank between carryouts and Swiftwater, and those tend to be people visiting.
Yeah.
Phil,
Phil,
sorry,
go
can I
ahead.
just ask real quick?
No, go ahead.
One of the other things that you guys have become responsible for is the rental program.
Yep.
And making sure rentals are safe, and that was kind of, I guess, handed down from the town to the precinct. And how's that going?
This is the inspection
The
program.
inspection
Yep, it's going well. You know, we're working with people to get things up to par that need to be corrected. It's gotten busy as everything passed at town meeting. The town office schedules it. We'll go out, either one or two or both of us, and move through the inspections. We'll work with people and try to come up with a plan to get things that need to be fixed in a timely manner.
Was that hard to accommodate? Because it seems like you're, you know, very, very busy on, you know, just doing what you had been doing previously.
You want to answer that?
It can be hard to accommodate, but I mean, for the most part, I think we've handled it pretty well. We haven't canceled many. So one of us, if we got a call going on, would handle the call. The other one might go to the inspection and get that done. They don't take long generally. So a rental home, you know, you can spend a half hour and be done.
Now, when you do how thorough when you do the inspections, and you know that's another whole subject about the inspections. But just in general, you're looking for what are the things you're looking for? And I think one of the concerns is that you're going to come in, Phil, and find out that the egress isn't right. Oh, by the way, you got the outlet's not right either, so I'm going to report you for that.
There's a checklist that we go by. The main things on the list are going to be egress, you know, out of sleeping areas. I mean, we didn't make the rules up. It certainly comes out of Concord, the fire marshal's office. But window size is the big thing. We look for GFIs, make sure they're working around the sinks, make sure they have an extinguisher. You know, it's It's pretty basic things, other than I would say the windows.
And just to refresh, one of you can chime in here. How did the rental program work? I mean, there was the affidavit, right, where you could just self-inspect, basically. But are you eventually physically inspecting all rentals?
Yeah, so the idea of the self-affidavit was to take the initial load of inspections off, so it wasn't all of them had to be done now. It was to pace them out a little bit. So we're doing the ones that want to be inspected now. The ones who have done the self-affidavit will eventually be put into the mix for inspection. And then as we go about, then they'll be rescheduled on I think they determined 3 years, but they're working on the schedule of how that's going to look so that we don't have all of them in 1 year and then nothing the next year, basically to space them out so that in the long run, it's just a constant, not a, up and down.
Now you're
wave.
doing, obviously, Conway Village Department, you're doing the ones on your side of town. North Conway's doing the ones up here, so I would think they would have more. Do they have more rentals? Who's got more? How many have you done, or how many?
I think it depends. I tend to lean towards we do quite a few of the long-term rentals in our area.
Right.
But I think they're probably more up here at the north end of town than there are in our end. We do our fair share because obviously there are a number of rental places between Cranmore Shores. Then you get into Washington Street, Pleasant Street. But then we also have some of the mobile home parks that have numerous rentals within them.
Long-term rentals.
That are long-term rentals. And those are taking, we'll schedule a chunk of time to basically go in and do a bunch of them all at once.
How many have you done-ish?
I don't have that number on me today.
I don't know.
What I think was, for the first quarter, I want to say it was between 100 and 150, but that's
quite
not
a
an
few.
exact number.
That's quite a few.
Sounds about right.
And that goes, and you spread that over 3 or 4 months, and then.
And how many out of that? How many violations have you not? Have you not specific violations, but how many? So you go in, you find a violation. Obviously, the person's got to remedy that, right? Given a certain time, but they're not. So what's the procedure if you find an egress problem? Like the windows are too small. Well, you're not going to fix a too small window overnight.
Right.
So how does that work?
So we do up a report that basically says what we found, good, bad, what needs to be fixed, what is up to par, and then it really depends on what is the issue. If it's something as simple as you need to add a smoke detector, then we can even say, can you let us know when it's done? Send us a picture of it, and we'll verify that it's done. Or maybe the smoke detectors exist, but they don't communicate, so they need to make sure that they communicate. Really, the only things that we stop are like no fly, we have to stop this now, are a bedroom that doesn't have appropriate egress at all, and a smoke detector. If the window needs to be corrected, we're obviously not going to, but if we find these bedroom basements that don't have any means of egress in the event of an emergency, then we have to stop. That's a state rule. If there's no smoke detection in the house at all, we have to stop. But that's an easy one of, can you go get some smoke detectors and install them, and then we'll work on the rest later.
How many full stops have you had?
I think I've only run into one, and it was a smoke detector issue,
Yeah.
and they resolved it by the end of the night.
Yeah. I had a bedroom issue with no windows, one way out, but it was an easy fix. They had 4 other bedrooms in the house. They just took the beds out of the room
Secured it.
and secured it.
So we're working with people to resolve those issues so that they can keep, we don't want anybody out on the streets for the night. They need to have a place to go. So if we can get the issue resolved, whether that's securing a bedroom and removing the bed so it's not an egress issue, or smoke detectors can be replaced so that they're safe for the night, then the rest they'll come up with a plan. We'll communicate that with planning and zoning at the town. Once they're done, they let us know, we stop back, make sure it's good, and we move forward. Right. Obviously, things such as windows take longer than replacing smoke detectors, and we understand that.
Sure. Damon?
I was just curious about like the opioid crisis and Narcan and those types of things. It's kind of been pushed out of the news a little bit, but is it still a major issue, or is it kind of subsided a bit?
It seems to go in waves. We still see it no matter what time of the year, how busy we are. We'll have a bunch of them all in one time, and then we'll go a couple weeks, we won't have anything. So it's really one of those things that kind of comes and goes. It's never really gone. But we're obviously always prepared to deal with it, as we are any medical emergency.
And the amount of crashes I think we've seen and heard about are just incredible. You know, we had the one at the library, and how are you keeping up with crashes and just, you know, bad driving that seems to be so common?
Yeah, I mean, the crashes tend to be, you know, it depends the time of the year where we are. You know, we do a lot of the slide-offs in the winter. You know, they're not too bad. And then you get down on 16 and up on the Kank, we tend to have more significant crashes. They can be labor-intensive. As you saw, I think it was 2 years ago, we had 2 very significant crashes on 16. And it's, you know, it takes a lot of personnel to be able to handle those when you have multiple patients, people who need to be extricated from vehicles, all while really keeping the scene safe at the same time, between making sure that there's no hazards such as leaking gas, electrical hazards, power lines involved. So we're learning to do more with less people because we don't have the same number of people coming to calls as we used to. A lot of times it's the on-duty staff plus maybe a call person or 2 if we're lucky. So we're learning to do what we can with 4 or 5 of us versus 10 or 15 of us.
But in terms of the ambulances, like there's the ambulances in Redstone, right? What's the name of the company that we contract with?
Action. Are you talking about, is it Action?
Action.
Or
Yeah, but you have your own ambulances.
Yep,
right?
we have 2.
So you're literally the first responders.
Yep, so
Yeah.
we're doing both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All that stuff.
And
Fire.
we should talk about that because there's going to be a committee.
Yep.
And can you talk about what the committee's going to do? And
So they're still working on establishing the committee and the
this is
guidelines.
the selectmen.
Yep, the selectmen. The idea is to help plan the future of what is emergency services going to look at, and that includes fire, ambulance.
The committee. This sounds like a pretty big deal.
It is a
Doesn't even
larger
have
committee.
Doesn't even have a formal name.
I believe it's the
committee.
advisory committee is
There we
what
go.
it's been formally. Don't quote me on that, but I
Right.
believe that's where we're going. So the idea is, you know, we offer a lot of service currently that we need to help educate everybody on what we do, and then also help determine where's that going to go. Our ambulances will remain part of the fire department as the turnover to the town, so the town will inherit that service. And then what is that going to look like? Same, more, less, where is that going to go down the road? We have 2 trucks that are both licensed to the paramedic level. They have full equipment, full medications within state protocol. We have every license level from EMR, which is the old first responder, through EMTs, advanced, and paramedics. There's a lot of equipment on those trucks that the community has invested in, as well as any ambulance in the state. We have cardiac monitors that have all the same capability as what you would find in a hospital. We have ventilators that are meant for ambulance transport, not necessarily the same ones you see in the hospital, but we're trained in utilizing those. We have different devices for airway adjuncts, intubation. We just purchased with this year's budget a new Lucas device. So the Lucas device is a mechanical CPR device that does CPR for us. They're proven to actually have better results than the old manual CPR. Not that manual CPR doesn't work, but people get tired. So the Lucas device is mechanical, doesn't get tired.
With the CPRs, there's no more blowing in the mouth, right?
No, so you know, we teach people how to do that,
Yeah.
but we've really moved towards a hands-only. We, on the other hand, have devices to take care of that. We have bag valve masks to ventilate patients. We have masks and barrier devices. So we're still expected to breathe for the patient at the medical level.
But if I'm just walking down the street and someone's
You know,
keeled over, no mouth,
We
just boom, boom,
encourage
boom,
them
right?
to do compressions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, 30 compressions and every 2 breaths if you're doing breaths. If not, 100 compressions a minute.
Yeah.
So those 2 devices really helped us out, especially as we now have 2, one on each ambulance, and with our short personnel many days, to not have to rotate people through doing compressions, we're seeing good results with that.
And just real quick, one of the questions is like, what level would the town want the EMS staff to be trained at, or the ambulances to run on? Because there's some that are like EMT advanced or basic or paramedic level, and the higher you go, the more expensive it is. So that's one of the questions.
And a lot of what's required isn't necessarily dictated by the town per se when it comes to protocol. That's state guidelines. So if you have an EMT level truck and the call necessitates and at higher license level, then they have to call for it per protocol. So even if you were to contract for this level and it requires this, you're still going to have to call for another service to come back that up. So that's why many places have moved towards an advanced or a paramedic level truck, because if you're going to call for it anyway, you might as well just have it existing. So the EMT would be kind of the base level for transporting criteria. You have to have an EMT on the truck. You have to have 2 medical licensed people on the truck to transport. And there needs to be an EMT on the truck, and then, or you can have an EMT in advance, EMT and a paramedic, but you need to have 2 licenses.
Okay, switch gears a little bit. You know,
Sure.
we've had people have been talking about consolidating the precincts forever, right? And, you know, Phil, I don't know how long you've been around. Are you a local guy?
I am.
Okay.
Yep, I grew up in the area. I've
Okay.
been with
I know
Conway.
Phil
It'll
has
be
been
10,
back in-
Yep.
10
I know
years
the-
the end of this year that I've been with Conway. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we all know they've been talking about consolidation forever. So this is a first step of consolidation. Do you ever see Conway Village and North Conway Village, is it one town-wide fire, or is it still provincial? I'll say that.
Yeah, I think that's the correct way to think of it. I think, yes, I think this is a good step forward. And I think it's a test to see how well it's going to work.
If you were to wave a magic wand, would you like to see a town-wide fire?
Oh, boy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just because of general efficiency?
Yeah. Efficiency, I think fiscal responsibility to the townspeople.
And what's preventing that outside of North Conway precinct? And you guys too. Everybody likes their
No, yeah, you're right. Everyone likes the territory.
right.
And it's what we've done for years, you know?
Can you see it happening in the future?
I think over time, it's just eventually going to be the way of, as he said, fiscal responsibility, having the staff. Nobody has the staff that we once had. Many, many years ago, not even 20 years ago, you got more call people. You know, the call volume was less. People could leave work. They could shut their business down. They could come in, and because the requirements weren't as much. As we've moved forward, call volume goes up. The requirements, the asks of the public are more. The demands are more, and so it's moving more towards needing to have staff there ready to go, because people can't leave work for the day and not have a paycheck coming in.
And when you say staff's ready to go, you mean professionals,
Yeah,
full-time professionals.
and I don't think there's ever a time that we'll see an elimination of the call member.
Right.
But to take that strain off the call member, to handle the day-to-day calls, the medical calls, the motor vehicle crashes, or at least the minor motor vehicle crashes, the calls we respond to all day long, and save our call staff for the bigger stuff, the stuff that they can say, okay, I'm going to close shop for the day, or I'm going to be able to leave work and leave for a couple hours, versus, hey, I've already left work 4 times this week. I can't leave work again for another call, which is what was happening. And we don't have the mills and the industrial that we used to have, where they would say, okay, we're going to close down for the rest of the day because there's a big fire in town. You guys can all go. It's more people are stuck where they are for work.
Well, when there's a big fire, Damon can go.
Yeah, I mean, and we still do see
Yeah.
some places that will allow their staff to go, but it's getting less and less.
I mean, what do you think about the coverage? Because, you know, in Barlow Jackson, they have the same thing. And I always think, how many ladder trucks do we really need in the Mount Washington Valley? You know, and I mean, you've got the big ladder truck here, you've got a big ladder truck there. Is that extra 5 minutes that important?
Well, and I think it all depends on what you're looking at. And, you know, our ladder truck, for example, is different from North Conway's tower truck. So theirs has a bucket on the end, which makes it a tower truck that allows people to stand at the top. However, it's a longer, bigger truck, not as easy to get in certain places. Ours is a straight stick, doesn't have the bucket on the end, but is smaller and able to get in tighter spots. So they're kind of complementary to each other, especially if you have a larger building where you need to get roof access or higher elevation in multiple locations. Our truck doubles as our second engine. So when I first started, we had 2 engines, a tower, a tanker, 2 ambulances, a forestry, and in the purchase of our ladder truck in 19, we consolidated the tower in with an engine. So it has a pump and water on it, and that goes primary. First of all, so we can get a good location on it, because obviously the ladder only reaches so far. And also anywhere in the district, we have hydrants. So the idea is you tie into a hydrant, you have the ladder, we can start the process, then the engine will follow that, or the tanker, and the engine will go to non-precinct areas without the hydrants.
How are you doing in terms of fires? Have there been a lot of fires this year or the last couple of years?
I would say it's kind of on average. They come and go. Fortunately, we do a good job with our fire prevention stuff, which also reduces the number of fires, which is the ultimate goal, right? We don't want people losing buildings and property and getting hurt. So our goal is to reduce the number of fires that we go to, but at the same time, it reduces the number of fires we go to. So I think, most of ours last year were actually mutual aid fires, but that doesn't reduce the risk of having one today.
If people want to be a firefighter or EMT, or what should they do?
Well, there's a couple different routes. So, we always welcome call people to apply. The call route is a little different than the full-time route. Full-time staff requires to be a minimum of Fire 1 and Fire 2 by Fire 1 to be hired, Fire 2 within a year. We require them to be an EMT, preferred to be an advanced EMT, because we have the ambulance, which many departments do. Then they also have to do the physical agility tests to be able to be a line firefighter. That's a state requirement. Once you're past that, you can go to the academy and do kind of where I'm here, I'm going to do everything in one-stop shopping at the Fire Academy in Concord, or you can take Fire 1 on evenings and weekends. What some of our most recent full-time staff have done is they started as call people either out of high school or just shortly. They've gone to the Fire Academy, and then as a full-time position opened up, they were ready to go and were able to apply and basically hire from within, which is a great recruiting. Plus, we can send them to the class.
What do you pay for, not you guys, but what for a regular full-time person?
For a full-time, are you talking
yeah.
Salary?
Yeah.
So it depends on your license level. It depends on your credentialing.
Yeah.
I want to say our starting rate roughly for a firefighter EMT is in the mid to upper 40,000 annually, moving up into the 50,000 for the advanced and higher licenses, and going up from there.
That's
depending on if you're an officer, if you have training. We give different credits for swift water training and technical training, and anything that they can add to that helps.
It's a little bit like asking a policeman who they like to arrest, but what kind of calls do you, say and enjoy maybe isn't the word, but that you find most satisfying? What kind of calls? Rescue calls, accidents, fires? What really makes it interesting for you guys?
Good outcome calls.
Okay, that's very diplomatic, Phil. You must some people must like fires. Like is a funny word, I realize that.
Yeah.
But still, some things could be more interesting if you happen to be a medical person more than a firefighter.
I was asked the question just recently, what is the staff like going to more?
Okay, there we go.
And I said, well, they're at the fire department because they like to fight fires. But we also have some really good staff that are really, really good medical EMTs and paramedics. Does that mean that they don't like the other side of it? No. Just because they're good at one thing doesn't mean that they don't like doing the other. But I think we all get satisfaction of being able to deliver a product that helps somebody. I know my satisfaction comes from when I've had a patient who we weren't sure was going to make it, walk back in the station and say thank you.
Yeah.
Or not even that. Sometimes it's just, the elderly person that we went who wasn't feeling well, and we were able to just get them to the hospital, be a little bit of comfort to them, help them out. Maybe we shovel the walkway on our way out so that when they get back, just the little stuff that they appreciate, and it's that appreciation that I think kind of lives with us. But I think definitely the getting to meet somebody after the fact, after the emergency's over, and knowing what we did help their outcome is very rewarding in our career.
Yeah. And Phil, what about you?
Yeah, I think you hit it right. Even in the bad outcome calls, there's some good that comes out of that stuff. The family members appreciate you being there, or, the person's house is on fire. We did everything we could to salvage things out of their home. So, and they appreciate that. So even on those bad calls, I think there is good.
Sure.
Good. You feel good.
And I think everybody, and when people have medical needs, everybody's totally appreciative.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, having a big fire, I mean, that's going to be pretty exciting. I mean, strategically to attack it, how are you going to do this and all that?
I think as you do it longer, it's not. It is, but it
Yeah.
isn't, because then there's more that comes to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's you realize that in the end that somebody's losing something out of
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, yeah, going to it and being able to do our job as we're trained has a sense of satisfaction.
I think us as younger firemen were like, yeah, we got a fire. You know,
Yeah, okay, there we
you
go.
know. But as we grow, it's like, okay, we got a job to do now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's.
Well,
get
I
to
think
the job.
everybody, we're out of time, and I think everybody appreciates it. I think both Phil's doing it. Obviously, we appreciate you, and Steve did a great job when he was chief, and it sounds like Conway Village is in pretty good hands. So I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for
thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah, thanks for
thank
the
you.
time.
Okay, thanks.